Hey, we are in 911 wake up call, 911 wake up call, and our 911 wake up call started on 11/9, November 9th, after the elections. We are in a crisis state, and democracy in New York City or New York State is on thin ice, and we have to organize. We have to come together. If you're not with a group that is organizing, join, find out who's organizing, find out who's protecting liberties and freedoms, and be about that um, because we are in a state of emergency. So let me just mention three things right off the bat, and that is that this governor who got back in office, Kathy Hochul, a couple months ago, established a regulation for quarantine camps, and the media didn't talk about it. Under this regulation of quarantine camps, she could lock anyone away by whim. She didn't have to have proof of anything. She could just lock people away in quarantine camps, um, and they wouldn't be able to get out unless they went through some massive trouble of getting lawyers. Uh, this alone would have been the end of democracy by just having one public leader who had that kind of power. Thankfully, it was struck down by a New York State Supreme Court judge and through the work of attorney Bobby Ann Cox. Please follow what she's doing, what she's talking about, and follow also unitingnys.com. Make sure you're following them because now that Hochul's back in office, she will probably return very soon with her regulation. Um, and we have to know exactly how to move when that should happen. The other thing is that there is also the CDC, which added the thing to the list of recommended things for children, the youngest of the young. And because they added that, it's going to make it much easier for the mandate lovers, those who love to mandate these things, to do what they're going to do, which is mandate. And, this governor who got back in office, um, she is definitely inclined to mandate. She said in a recent debate that she will not mandate at this time, um, and which leaves that door open for her. She has already made plenty of agreements and statements indicating that she would do that. So we have to be very watchful of that. If she mandates, she would exclude the youngest of the young from society, from schools, from people would be excluded from their place of work, their networks, their communities, and we'll have to be ready. We'll have to be organized. Number three is the media has been murmuring about this thing they call triple-demic. It's their new boogeyman. So this new boogeyman is in place, and it would just be another horse to ride on, another flag to wave when any tyrannical officials want to do what they want to do, which is really rip down democracy. Okay, so with all these things in place, we have no choice but to organize and get involved with this, get involved with protecting our liberties. Um, Now, as you know, no one talked about the thing, the new boogeyman, over the last few weeks because certain officials wanted to get back in office. They didn't want that to be an election issue. They didn't want it to hamper their ability to walk back in office. They didn't want to remind you of the devastation that lockdowns and that mandates have caused everyone's community. Um, No one wanted to even talk about the relationship between mandates and lockdowns and crime. What happens when you destroy jobs? What happens when you lock people out of society? Does that have an effect on crime? I think that's a no-brainer. Um, so all these things are important, And these are things to keep in mind and watchful and organize. Time for everyone to get in the game on this. And so for now, what I want to do is let's go on a little walk, show you some things in the neighborhood. I'm going to take a walk around to the food pantry right around the corner. It is the food pantry line. And those lines, I've said, have been here since the lockdown. They have not gone anywhere. This line is quite long. It's a long wait. And this is the state of affairs that has been happening since March of 2020. So when lockdown happened in March of 2020, I live around the corner from a grocery store. Never seen anybody, grown men, able-bodied grown men, inside the grocery store begging for money. Never. But when lockdown happened, March 2020, only about a week and a half into the lockdown, there were grown men in the grocery store begging for money. In the grocery store. And of course, that's one of the reasons why the grocery stores just had to hire security. So suddenly every store had security guards in front. They had to take their budget, or maybe they're getting funding for that, I don't know. The money that could be used to create jobs for some of those people who had their businesses and their jobs canceled by lockdown. Well, some of that money had to, of course, go to higher security to keep people from coming into these stores and asking for money or taking what they need at that point. So here's another interesting thing you might want to know. The Ku Klux Klan was notorious in the South for one phenomenon that was perhaps more devastating than the fact they were lynching and killing black people. And what they were more notorious for than even lynching and killing black people was destroying black businesses. Yes, the Ku Klux Klan destroyed black businesses rampantly. That was one of the things that they really did. And they they prided themselves on that. So if you had a black business in the South, you wanted to move. Of course, you were going to Detroit if you could, because Detroit was the place to go. So you took your black business and you moved to Detroit. You got out the South, because the Klan, if your business was standing on its own, prospering on its own, the Klan was coming to take that business out. And sometimes they would warn you, sometimes they wouldn't. But you knew you had to go. So with that said, that was probably the most devastating work of the Klan, was the destruction of black business, rampant destruction of black business. So let me ask you, what did lockdown do to the Klan? Sort of was playing Little League Baseball when it comes to. Lockdown was Major League Baseball destroying black businesses. Lockdown destroyed over 60% of black businesses all throughout the United States. It made the Klan look very Little League. So when Democratic officials support lockdown, support vaccine mandates destroyed businesses too. And they destroyed jobs. They put thousands of people on the streets and left them homeless and left them without ways to feed their families. If they didn't do that, a lot of them got fake cards. Okay. So now it's our turn, because in the support of lockdowns and mandates, they made the work of the Klan look like Little League Baseball.